Movie theaters, dimly lit, surrounded by strangers, echoing with silence between scenes. Most people come for escape. But what if the screen isn't the only place where horror lives? What if the true scary horror stories unfold not on film, but all around you? Welcome to 3 true horror stories from inside movie theaters. These aren't your typical horror stories for sleep or campfire tales. These are true horror stories, chilling scares, eerie encounters, and terrifying tales that happen to real people in the one place they thought they'd be safe. So if you're into haunted tales, sleep paralysis nightmares, ghost stories that follow you home, and urban legends that might just be real, then hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because we're about to roll the reel on fear itself. Now dim the lights, settle in, and remember, some seats come with more than just a view. This story is about the projectionist's last show. Lucas had just started a part-time job at a small, older movie theater downtown. Vintage charm, red velvet seats, golden chandeliers, and a dusty screen that had seen decades of blockbusters. Lucas was assigned to the projection booth, a job he thought would be peaceful. But peace is the last thing he found. From the very first shift, something was off. Every time the projector started, the booth turned cold, unnaturally cold. He blamed faulty vents, except there were none. Just the steady hum of aged machines and faint, rhythmic breathing behind him. At first, he brushed it off as nerves. But soon, he realized he was living through one of those true horror stories he'd only heard whispered about, ghost stories that somehow felt more real when the lights went out. One night, during a late horror screening, the film glitched. Just a few seconds of static. But hidden in those frames was a shadowed figure. Eyes like black voids and a twisted, inhuman smile stretched across its face. Lucas paused the reel and rewound. Nothing. The figure was gone. He mentioned it to his coworker Ethan the next day. Ethan's face went pale. He quietly told Lucas about the old projectionist, Gerald, who died of a heart attack in that very booth. Alone. Forgotten for days. Since then, the 10:30 p.m. screenings were notorious for eerie experiences, flickering lights, equipment failures, and a drop in temperature cold enough to make your breath visible. Some believe Gerald's spirit never left, drawn to the booth, playing out some loop of his final night. Lucas laughed nervously. Until it happened again. While threading a reel, he felt a soft touch on his shoulder. He spun around. No one. Then he glanced out the booth's window, and saw it. A solitary figure, sitting in row C, perfectly still. The same face from the glitched film. The same black, pit-like eyes. Watching. Lucas panicked. He yanked at the booth door. It wouldn't budge. Locked. The projector sputtered back to life on its own. The screen flickered, showing a live feed of the booth. Himself, standing alone. Then, the figure appeared on the screen, behind him. He screamed. By morning, Lucas was gone. The booth empty. The reel still spinning in endless static. Now, theater employees refused to enter the booth alone. Because every night, at exactly 10:30 p.m., the paranormal activity returns, lights flicker, the temperature drops, and a shadow appears in seat C13, unmoving. And it doesn't end there. Security footage from the theater has captured something even stranger. Short bursts of static on the cameras, always sync to the moment the projector turns on. Within those bursts, sleep paralysis-like images appear, blurry, distorted frames showing Lucas, still in the booth, eyes wide, mouth open in silent horror. Some believe his soul never left, trapped between film and reality, cursed to relive his final night over and over again. Customers have started reporting more than just technical glitches. Some say they feel watched. Others say they see movement out of the corner of their eye, creepy stories written in real time. There was even a viral post on a local horror subreddit titled, "The Man in Row C," detailing an encounter that perfectly matched Lucas's final shift. It ended with the words, "I'm never watching movies in the dark again." If you ever find yourself in a vintage theater, surrounded by velvet seats and flickering screens, be careful. You might be walking into more than a movie. You might be stepping into a true scary horror story. Into a world of haunted tales, dark folklore, and terrifying tales you'll wish you never believed. Because some ghosts don't haunt houses. Some haunt projectors. This story is about midnight screams at Row D. Jessica and her boyfriend Ryan were hardcore horror fans. They had a tradition of catching midnight showings on release night, especially for supernatural films. So when a new ghost story hit theaters, they booked the best seats they could, middle row, center. The theater was almost empty, just 10 people in total. Perfect, she thought. Fewer people meant more immersion. But just 10 minutes into the movie, Jessica noticed something strange. Someone 2 seats to her left in Row D was silently sobbing. She leaned forward, trying to get a better look, but the lighting was too dim. Then came the whispering, low, foreign, and rhythmic, like a chant from some forgotten ritual. The words were unintelligible, but the tone, ominous, unsettling. She whispered to Ryan, "Do you hear that?" He looked at her confused. "Hear what?" Jessica turned again. Row D was empty. The whispering grew louder. Now harsh, guttural, pulsing with a rhythm that felt ancient. Ryan clutched his temples and whispered, "My head's killing me. It's like something's crawling inside." Then the screen glitched. For a brief second, it flashed an image of a screaming woman, mouth wide, eyes bloodshot. No sound. Just a single, horrific frame. Then the movie resumed as if nothing had happened. Jessica shrugged it off. A tech glitch, she hoped. But the real horror had just begun. That night, at 3:17 a.m., her phone rang. No caller ID. She answered, and froze. It was the same whispering. In the days that followed, paranormal disturbances plagued her life. Her dog barked at empty corners and refused to enter her bedroom. Her TV powered on by itself, always showing only static. Worse still, deep scratches appeared on her bedroom walls, always in threes. No blood, no intruder, just claw marks etched into plaster. Jessica began experiencing classic sleep paralysis. At 2 a.m., her eyes would snap open. But she couldn't move. Frozen, she'd stare at the ceiling while shadows danced across the room. Once, she swore she saw a face hovering above her, pale, whispering something into her ear. She couldn't understand the language, but she felt it. Ancient. Evil. Dark folklore incarnate. In desperation, she recorded herself sleeping. The footage revealed something deeply unsettling. Every night, at the exact same time, she sat up for 2 minutes, eyes wide, mouth moving in silence, and then lay back down. In the background, the whispering grew louder with each night. Frightened beyond belief, Jessica reached out to a local paranormal expert who specialized in true scary horror stories and haunted tales. The woman studied her footage and said something Jessica would never forget: "You didn't just see her, you acknowledged her. That's how she follows." Terrified, Jessica moved apartments, changed her phone number, even got rid of every reflective surface. But the haunted stories didn't stop. Her nightmares were now interactive. In one, she watched herself in a theater again, except everyone around her had blacked out eyes. And in the dream, she looked to her left, and saw herself whispering in a dead language. She now sleeps with the lights on and white noise blasting to drown out any chance of hearing the whispers. But sometimes, when everything is quiet, she still hears them. Soft, chilling, creepy stories replayed by the dead, we watch together, now we stay together. And worst of all, every once in a while, when Jessica catches her reflection in a dark screen or mirror. It blinks before she does. This story is about the man behind the curtain. Dylan loved sneaking into movies with friends. It was a tradition, buy a single ticket, then slip into a second film undetected. One rainy Friday night, they slipped into a late-night thriller. The theater was half empty, dark, and almost too quiet. As they made their way to the back row, Dylan noticed a curtain swaying near the emergency exit. Probably just an air vent, his friend joked. But there was no vent. Halfway through the film, the room dimmed even more as a man entered through the side door. He was tall, wearing a long, dusty coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured most of his face. He didn't speak. He didn't sit. He just stood in the aisle, watching the screen. Watching them. When Dylan pointed him out to his friend, the man had vanished. So had the curtain. Curious, and admittedly a little freaked out, they checked behind the curtain after the movie. What they found wasn't just unsettling, it was nightmare fuel. There was a crawlspace barely large enough for a person to crouch inside. Inside it were scattered food wrappers, an old metal cot with a ratty blanket, and stacks of newspaper clippings, articles about missing persons spanning over 2 decades. All of them had one detail in common: the last place they were seen was this theater. The group called the police. A full investigation followed. The theater manager admitted they'd heard strange noises at night, food going missing from the break room, and an awful stench near the projection booth, but no one had ever considered someone was living inside the theater walls. The man was never found. But that wasn't the end. Dylan never forgot that night. Years later, while visiting a different city, he decided to kill time with a movie. New theater. New staff. Clean. Modern. Safe. Or so he thought. As the trailers began to play, Dylan glanced toward the emergency exit. There, in the shadows, stood a man in a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat. Unmoving. Watching. When he blinked, the man was gone. After that incident, Dylan began to spiral. He started experiencing sleep paralysis. At night, he'd wake up unable to move, his body frozen while a tall silhouette loomed in the corner of the room, watching. Sometimes, he'd hear soft footsteps behind his bed. Other times, he'd wake to find the faint scent of mold and dust lingering in his apartment, the same smell from the crawlspace. One night, he returned home to find his bedroom closet cracked open. Inside, tucked behind his shoes, was a single folded newspaper clipping. It was the original article about the first missing person case he'd found behind the curtain years ago. He'd never taken it. He'd never kept a copy. And now it was in his home. Determined to stop the growing sense of dread, Dylan reached out to a paranormal researcher who specialized in true scary horror stories and urban legends. She confirmed what he feared most: some haunted stories don't involve spirits. Some involve real people, those who live in shadows, hide in walls, and prey on others who feel safe in public spaces. The man in the coat, she said, wasn't a ghost. He was something worse, a watcher. A human being who had crossed into the realm of myth, his story now told as a nightmare tale across forums and Reddit threads under titles like The Theater Lurker, The Man in the Curtain, and Seat Stalker. All different names, all the same description. Since then, Dylan hasn't been able to go back to a movie theater. Because now, every time he turns on a film at home or flips through horror stories for sleep, his cameras glitch. Every few weeks, his security system notifies him of motion detection, in his hallway, at 3 a.m. The footage always shows the same thing, nothing at first. Then, a tall man, frozen in one frame. Just watching. So if you're ever at a late-night screening, sitting near the back, and you feel like someone's watching you, don't turn around. Because in the world of true horror stories, haunted tales, and eerie encounters, the most terrifying thing isn't what's on the screen. It's what's hiding behind the curtain. These true horror stories from inside movie theaters show us, fear doesn't always come from the screen. Sometimes, it's sitting beside you. Sometimes, it follows you home. If these true scary horror stories, Home Alone horror stories, and urban legends got your heart racing, like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the next time the lights dim and the curtains draw, watch your back. Because the real isn't the only thing rolling. Stay safe. And keep the lights on.